Great Zimbabwe. The African city colonial historians refused to believe Africans built. European explorers found massive stone walls rising out of the African bush, some over 30 feet tall, built without a single drop of mortar holding the stones together. Rather than accept that a local African civilization had constructed it, colonial-era archaeologists spent decades inventing elaborate theories crediting Phoenicians, Egyptians, and even the biblical Queen of Sheba, anyone except the actual people who had built it. Great Zimbabwe, the extensive stone ruins located in what is now the modern nation of Zimbabwe, represents the remains of a substantial medieval African city that served as the capital of a significant regional kingdom flourishing roughly between the 11th and 15th centuries, a civilization whose considerable wealth and regional influence derived substantially from control over regional trade networks connecting the African interior with Indian Ocean coastal trading routes, facilitating trade in gold, ivory, and other valuable goods that reached considerably distant markets across the broader Indian Ocean trading world. The site's most visually striking and historically significant feature remains its extensive dry stone architecture. Massive granite block walls constructed using a genuinely sophisticated technique that required no mortar or binding material whatsoever, with the structure's remarkable stability instead depending entirely on the precise, careful shaping and fitting of individual granite blocks, a construction technique demonstrating genuinely considerable architectural and engineering sophistication, including walls reaching heights exceeding 30 feet in some sections, representing a scale of monumental stone construction that stood as one of sub-Saharan Africa's most significant pre-colonial architectural achievements. When European explorers and colonial administrators first encountered Great Zimbabwe's ruins in the 19th century, then under Portuguese and subsequently British colonial influence in the broader region, the site's genuine scale and architectural sophistication proved genuinely difficult for many contemporary European observers to reconcile with their own deeply held, explicitly racist colonial-era assumptions regarding African society's presumed technological and organizational capabilities. Assumptions that directly shaped how these early European visitors and subsequent colonial-era researchers actually approached formally investigating and explaining the site's genuine origins. This specific ideological bias produced a genuinely significant, sustained pattern of colonial-era pseudo-archaeological theorizing, specifically intended to attribute Great Zimbabwe's actual construction to various non-African civilizations, with prominent colonial-era researchers and explorers proposing theories crediting the site's construction to Phoenician traders, ancient Egyptian influence, or even connecting the site specifically to the biblical Queen of Sheba's legendary kingdom. Theories that shared no genuine, credible, archaeological or historical evidentiary basis, but that proved genuinely convenient and ideologically comfortable for colonial administrators specifically seeking to justify continued European political control over the region by suggesting the area's own indigenous African population couldn't possibly have constructed anything of comparable sophistication independently. These specific colonial-era theories persisted as genuinely significant, actively promoted official explanations for the site's origins for a remarkably extended period well into the 20th century despite growing, increasingly definitive archaeological evidence directly contradicting them since Rhodesia's own colonial-era government, the specific territory encompassing Great Zimbabwe before the country's eventual independence and eventual formal renaming to Zimbabwe, actively suppressed and censored archaeological findings and publications that directly, explicitly confirmed the site's genuine African origins, since acknowledging this fact directly conflicted with the colonial government's own broader political justifications for continued white minority rule over the territory's African population. Professional archaeologists conducting genuine, methodologically rigorous excavation and dating work at the site throughout the 20th century. Despite this sustained, genuinely significant political pressure and censorship, consistently produced archaeological evidence definitively confirming the site's actual construction by the local Shona people's ancestors, indigenous African builders whose sophisticated stoneworking techniques and broader regional trading network directly, definitively explained the site's genuine origins without requiring any of the elaborate, ideologically motivated non-African theories colonial administrators had spent decades actively promoting instead. The genuine political significance of this archaeological question extended directly into the territory's eventual struggle for independence from British colonial rule. Since Great Zimbabwe's authentic African origins became a genuinely significant symbol within the broader independence movement, with the eventual newly independent nation formally adopting the name Zimbabwe specifically in direct reference to the ancient site, and incorporating stylized representations of the site's distinctive carved soapstone bird sculptures directly into the new nation's official flag and broader national symbolism. A deliberate, formal reclamation of the site's genuine African heritage following decades of colonial-era denial and active historical suppression. What makes Great Zimbabwe's specific archaeological history genuinely significant extends well beyond the site's own considerable historical and architectural merit, since the sustained, decades-long colonial-era campaign to deny the site's authentic African origins represents a genuinely significant, extensively documented case study regarding exactly how deliberate historical and archaeological distortion can serve direct, calculated political purposes, with an entire colonial government actively working to suppress accurate archaeological understanding of a significant historical site, specifically because that accurate understanding directly undermined the government's own broader ideological justification for continued political control. What makes Great Zimbabwe endure as one of history's most significant examples of contested archaeological interpretation isn't simply the genuine architectural and historical significance of the ruins themselves, considerable as that significance genuinely remains, but the specific, remarkable demonstration the site's documented modern history provides regarding exactly how thoroughly colonial-era ideology could distort even straightforward, ultimately confirmable archaeological fact for decades, requiring sustained scholarly persistence against active, deliberate political suppression, before the site's genuine, authentic history could finally receive the kind of accurate, undisputed acknowledgement it had always actually deserved. If stories like this, where colonial administrators spent decades inventing elaborate lies, specifically to avoid crediting the actual people who built one of history's most impressive ancient cities, are exactly what you come here for, subscribe to The Grave Details, because history holds more stories like this than most people will ever know.